Hello everyone, and welcome to another ProGuides video. Today we will be giving you an item tier list coming from our Challenger analyst for patch 9.17. The information in this video has been gathered purely from Challenger level games, so you can rest assured if you follow this tier list, it will bring more consistency to your games. Please note that this is a prediction tier list for patch 9.17 and will be updated in the near future for certain items. But first, I'd like to remind you guys to click on the link below and take a look at the updated ProGuides.com if you want to learn more about teamfight tactics. ProGuides will always have info on the newest patches, best builds, and strategies. There are all kinds of different resources from top players to help you guys become the best player that you can be. So be sure to check out ProGuides.com using the link in the description. Now, let's get back into the video. Before we get into the item tier list, it's important to understand why the items are placed where they are. First and foremost, it's all about consistency. The items in S and A tier will be the most consistent throughout the majority of your games and are viable on many heroes. We have to distinguish from what is considered a fun build and a build that will get you top 4 consistently. So some of you might say, but wait, Thornmail Braum and Dragon's Claw and Warmogs is unkillable. Those items are OP. Well, these are very specific items for a very specific hero, which fall under the category of a fun build. And yes, it can win you the game when those items are assembled. But following the items provided in our tier list that fall under S and A tier will bring more consistency to your games overall. Second, we have to understand what the items in the S and A tier are trying to achieve. After several changes to the damage taken by your little legend when losing a fight, health still remains the most important resource, especially for the early game. With the new changes to damage taken, you can die at 30 HP from one single bad fight, so having a few extra HP from the early game can make the difference between a top 4 finish and a bottom 4 finish. Now, there are some cases where you want to lose health early on so you can get priority on the carousel, but that strategy is not consistent. Keeping that in mind, the items you see in the S and A tier are because they help you stay at a high health pool in the early game, are strong in the current meta, or they're just plain good items throughout all stages of the game. Another reason for wanting to consistently keep your health high in the early game is because we all know that transitions can be tricky and have to be done quickly. Having the higher health pool gives you more time to pull off the transition without the added pressure of possibly dying next turn. Without further ado, let's get into the item tier list. S tier. In S tier, we have Force of Nature, Guardian Angel, Static Shiv, Ionic Spark, and Morellonomicon. Force of Nature. Ever since the addition of 6 Brawlers, 9 Blade Master, and 6 Gunslinger, a new combination of compositions have come up like 6 Blade Master, 4 Gunslinger, 4 Demon, 3 Elementals, 4 Sorcerers, or 6 Brawler, 3 Sorcerers. These are comps that are too strong when put together, and Force of Nature allows that. What happens between metas is that sometimes the make a class items are a bit stronger. For example, when sorcerers were overwhelming, Spatula was always used to make Yuumi, but as things are starting to get balanced, FON became more versatile. Force of Nature also allows you to get an earlier power spike. Is the composition you're building done at level 8? With FON, it can be done at level 7. Just take caution in how you use the spatulas, as sometimes it is a greater power spike to make someone a specific class, giving you a much needed synergy. For example, the 3 sorcerer buff. Take a look at your bench before committing to a Force of Nature. Do you have an extra sorcerer to put in to complete your 3 sorcerer buff? If not, this is where you use the spatula to make a sorcerer instead. Now, something important to keep in mind about Force of Nature is that this is an item you want to prioritize for mid to late game. Don't go out of your way to grab an early spatula, as you might not see one again for a while. Instead, focus on the early game items that keep you at a high health pool. Static Shiv and Ionic Spark. So what are considered the early game items? Static Shiv and Ionic Spark fall under this category. The sole purpose of these items is to help you get kills in the early game, so even if you lose a fight, at least you took down some champions to reduce the amount of damage your little legend takes. Give the Static Shiv to your fastest attacker or someone who needs the mana, and give the Ionic Spark to someone who can use the extra ability power and who lives the longest, so that the item has a chance to proc multiple times. Next, we have the powerhouses of Guardian Angel and Morellonomicon. These 2 items have dominated the meta for a while now, and even though Morello is getting a slight nerf this patch, it still retains its position in S tier. This is because the items it was good against, Bloodthirster and Hextech Gunblade, also received a small nerf. Let's talk about Guardian Angel and why it is so strong. This item recently got changed to remove grievous wounds on activation, making it more consistent. But the bigger buff was that it now allows ultimates to continue during the activation effect. So if Morgana gets her ult off before dying, the chains stay on their targets and apply the stun after the duration is complete. Same goes with champions like Kennen, Aatrox, Swain. Their ultimates still continue if they die during the animation of the ult. And lastly, in the early game, GA is like having an extra half of a champion on board, as your hero revives with 500 health, making enemy units have to kill him more than once. As for Morellonomicon, the change from 100% to 80% does not affect where this item gets placed on the tier list. Its biggest strength is the reduced healing it applies for 10 seconds. This allows you to kill units like Draven with a Bloodthirster, the ever so popular Evelynn with a Gunblade, and is a good counter to items like Redemption and Warmogs. A tier. In A tier, we have Rapid Fire Cannon, Hush, Red Buff, Luden's Echo, and the newly buffed Guinsoo's Rageblade. Let's talk about Rageblade first, as the item itself wasn't buffed, but rather the attack speed cap has been increased from 2.5 to 5. That means because Rageblade stacks indefinitely, essentially until it reaches the attack speed cap, this was an indirect buff to the item, as it can reach double the attack speed it could before. With the added buff to Rangers, we might see some scary pairings with this item. This patch is still fresh, and we will continue to monitor how this item performs and make any necessary changes to the tier list if needed. Luden's Echo. Luden's Echo is another early game item, and it is a little more specific as you want it on champions like Lucian, Ahri, or Garen. You might not know this, but Garen gets 2 procs of Luden's Echo in one spin, actually making this item a good item choice for him in the early game. Hush and Rapid Fire Cannon. Hush and Rapid Fire Cannon are monster items in the late game. Hush is ever more important in the current meta with champions like Cho'Gath and Sejuani being played so often. Shutting those ults down can make the difference between winning or losing the fight. Delaying a Swain or Gnar from ulting can turn the tides of the fight in your favor. Compositions that rely on their ultimates like demons with a brand carry get shut down by this item. You almost always want a Hush for the late game. As for RFC, having this item early on can allow you to transition into a late game champion like Draven or Jinx, giving you a big power spike when those champions get 2-starred. Red Buff. This item is great as it applies the powerful anti-healing for 10 seconds, but it is not on the same level as Morellonomicon as the debuff is only applied to one unit at a time, that being whoever the champion is currently auto-attacking. Whereas Morellonomicon can be applied to multiple units when placed on heroes like Kennen, Garen, Aurelion Sol, Karthus, and Brand. Those are a few examples. That being said, you want to try and get red buff on champions that can hit multiple targets, like Gunslingers or Blade Masters. B tier. B tier is where we have the majority of the items, where they are good items and can make for great combinations with certain champions, but should not be prioritized over the S and A tier items as we focus on consistency. In this tier, we have Bloodthirster, Hextech Gunblade, Infinity Edge, Runan's Hurricane, Zeke's Herald, Spear of Shojin, and Rabadon's Deathcap. Bloodthirster and Hextech Gunblade just got some minor nerfs. This drops them down to B tier. They are still powerful items to use on champions like Draven or Evelynn, and because Grievous Wounds is now 80% reduced healing, it doesn't feel as bad when you build these items and the enemy has multiple red buffs and Morellonomicon. And we have to keep in mind that there is a new source of Grievous Wounds that can be applied by Pantheon. Infinity Edge. Infinity Edge could be an item that can very well be placed in A tier with patch 9.17, since the change to Assassins increases their crit chance now, making Infinity Edge an attractive option. More testing needs to be done, and we will keep an eye out on this item and make any necessary changes to the tier list. But for now, Guardian Angel takes priority with the BF sword. Runan's Hurricane. Runan's Hurricane. Now, I know what you're thinking. This item does so much damage, especially when you put it on Draven. But yet again, we have to take into consideration item priority. The spatula should be used on a force of nature or making a class before considering to use it for Runan's Hurricane. If you have the 2-star Draven, the 2-star Jinx, and a red buff on them, that is when it would be an excellent choice to make the Runan's Hurricane. Zeke's Herald. Zeke's Herald is tricky because it has two great components, the BF sword that can build into Guardian Angel and the Giant's Belt that can build into Morellonomicon or red buff. I would use a Zeke's Herald if you're trying to win streak in the early to mid game. Spear of Shojin and Rabadon's Deathcap. Spear of Shojin and Rabadon's Deathcap are good items, but they should only be made when you have extra components lying around, or if you need the Spear of Shojin to finish a sweet item combination like a Kale with Spear of Shojin, Guinsoo's Rageblade, and Seraph's Embrace. C tier. In C tier, we have Redemption, Warmogs, Thornmail, Cursed Blade, Frozen Heart, Zephyr, Titanic Hydra, and Seraph's Embrace. These items are very specific for one or two champions, or get countered by the S and A tier items. Redemption just got a 300 health nerf, dropping the item down to the C tier. It is a great combination with Guardian Angel, but unfortunately any champion without the Guardian Angel, or if the enemy has Grievous Wounds, the healing from Redemption gets countered. Warmogs and Thornmail. The combination of Warmogs and Thornmail have found great success in champions like Braum, Shyvana, and Gnar. Unfortunately, shapeshifters have not been in a good spot for a while now, but with the recent buff to shapeshifters, this might change. Keep an eye out on this patch, as Warmogs and Thornmail might get bumped up the tier list. Keep in mind that Warmogs does get countered by Grievous Wounds, and since Thornmail is now magic damage, it gets countered by the Dragon trait along with the Dragon's Claw item. Cursed Blade. After the nerf to a 20% chance to shrink, we've seen this item drop down the tier list. It is now used if you happen to have these extra components along with a Gunslinger or Blade Master to go with it. Frozen Heart, Zephyr, and Titanic Hydra. Frozen Heart, Zephyr, and Titanic Hydra are all okay items, but are not consistent and can be played around. Frozen Heart doesn't get good value until you know exactly who you're positioning against. When there are 7 players in the lobby still, and half the lobby is to the left and the other half is to the right, Frozen Heart sometimes only affects one unit, which is suboptimal. If you notice someone running a Zephyr, you can swap your important unit like Kindred or Karthus in the last second so they can't predict where your unit will be. Titanic Hydra doesn't always hit multiple units in the core and gets no value if it's only hitting the primary target with no one behind it. Seraph's Embrace. Seraph's Embrace is only good on specific champions like Akali, Aurelian Soul, and Karthus. Those are late game units, and usually you are using a Tear in the early game for a Static Shiv or a Hush for the late game. D tier. In D tier, we have Sword of the Divine and Locket of the Iron Solari. Not much is needed to be said about Sword of the Divine, as it is getting removed from the game in patch 9.18 for a reason. And Locket of the Iron Solari has received nerf after nerf, making it an undesirable item choice. Situational. Last but not least, we have the Situational tier. In this tier, we have Dragon's Claw, Phantom Dancer, and all the Mecha class items. Blade of the Ruined King, Darken, Frozen Mallet, Knight's Vow, Yumu's Ghost Blade, and Yumi. Dragon's Claw and Phantom Dancer change on the tier list according to the meta. If it is an assassin or physical damage heavy meta, Phantom Dancer goes up the tier list. If it is a magic damage heavy meta, Dragon's Claw goes up the tier list. With patch 9.17 being fresh, we need to wait for the meta to establish before deciding how highly to prioritize these items. For now, we'll leave them in the Situational tier. As for the Mega Class items, the priority changes from game to game depending on what composition you're making. There are certain metas where Sorcerer buff might be overpowered, and so you prioritize Yumi a lot higher. But for now, there doesn't seem to be a specific class that is overtuned, so the Mega Class items remain in the Situational tier until further experimenting is done. So that brings us to the end of the video. Is there an item combination that you guys have had great success with? Let us know in the comments below. I hope you guys found this video informative and that it helps you with your climb to higher ranks. Until then, see you all in the next one.